What's up, Internet? I am fully vaxxed now. I learned two things. One, y'all were right about the second dose and the symptoms that follow. Oh my god, I hate it. I'm so glad I didn't get COVID for real. Second, don't judge a book by its cover, don't judge a movie by its title.
On the first night, you hear him. And on the second night, you see him.
And on the third night?
Well, on the third night, he finds you.
The Empty Man is directed by David Pryor. It stars James Badge Dale as James LaSombra, an ex-detective who is dragged back into old habits when several teenagers in his town go missing. And in investigating their disappearances, he ends up stumbling down a rabbit hole of conspiracies, cults, and creepy shit related to a local urban legend called the Empty Man. There's a lot to unpack here, so let's get started. The Empty Man was released in theaters in last October in the middle of a freaking pandemic when no one was going to the movies, to virtually no marketing and a trailer that made it look really bad. Your typical supernatural horror movie filled with obnoxious teens who can't act and a stupid plot involving some supernatural element. No one saw it, and the few reviews it did get trashed it. And now it's out on streaming, and everyone was telling me to watch it back when it was in theaters, and my response was, no, I've seen enough bad creepypasta movies. So I skipped it. And wow! Was I dumb or what? Quick bit of backstory. This movie was shot at some point back around 2017-2018, around the same time that the Fox-Disney merger was happening behind closed doors, which halted production, and then the producer, who was the film's champion, ended up leaving the studio. And the new executives didn't really care about this indie movie that no one was going to see, and demanded an assembly cut of the movie like days after they wrapped, which not only isn't doable, isn't smart. They wanted to test screen it immediately, and that is what kills movies. If the cut being shown to audiences isn't one that the director has had time to mull over and sit with and be satisfied with, how the hell is an audience going to be satisfied with that? And as a result, the test screening was disastrous, and the results were really bad. So the studio cut their own version of the film together, and the results of that test screening were actually worse than the first test screening. So after ping-ponging it around for a few years, the studio had no idea what to do with this because they were merging with Disney anyway. Disney, I'm sure, had no idea what to do with this. And eventually they just said, fuck it, let David Pryor release his original cut of the movie. And then they slapped it in theaters in the middle of a pandemic in October when no one's going to the movies. That's criminal. And it's a shame, honestly, because The Empty Man is something that's worth checking out, for better and for worse. And it's something that I feel like a lot of people need to see. I assumed, mistakenly, that this would be another awful, redundant, bad teen creepypasta movie. Something along the lines of Bye Bye Man, or Slender Man, or insert scary word here, man. And I was sort of right in the idea behind this movie, but man, this is the movie that those films wish they could be. It takes that urban legend style narrative and it applies a police procedural to it. And the result you get is something along the lines of Slender Man meets Seven. Like, if I was going to make a Slender Man film, this is the movie I would have made. A Fincher-esque detective thriller with intense, thought-provoking psychological themes to it that occasionally become overtones. And all of that is tackled with this astonishing amount of ambition and confidence in its concept that both makes it feel far grander in its scope and creates a more interesting, enjoyable experience than any of the other bullshit you've seen before. Where The Empty Man really surprised me is in its restraint. Based on its title and its trailer, I was really expecting nothing other than cheap jump scares and bad teen acting, and I got exactly none of that. I don't think there's a single jump scare in this movie. It relies entirely on dread and tone, and really slow, methodical pacing to put you on edge and make your skin crawl, and honestly, it makes this movie feel a lot more like a slow burn. There are several points in this movie where I actually out loud said, nope. And that's funny because one of those instances, the character says the exact same thing.
Yeah, no.
I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a scene at a camp, and it is legitimately terrifying from start to finish. It's more unnerving to just experience it for yourself, so I won't describe it in detail, but I will say it gave me full-body chills and actually had my heart palpitating, and it felt like something out of an Ari Aster film. There are a lot of different ways to interpret this film. It's supernatural, it's psychological, it's Lovecraftian, it's a crime thriller, it's a cult film. The amount of occurrences in this film that can be viewed in multiple different ways is astounding, and it basically creates a film that I could view one way and you could view an entirely different way. It's rare to see an indie film this ambitious, let alone one that's released by a major studio. To see a movie like this with money from 20th Century Fox behind it is awesome, and that's what makes it that much more heartbreaking that it was just thrown out in the middle of a pandemic. The teens I was expecting to be bad, not bad and not really even in the movie that much. It's more of a C-plot, barely an element here, and it basically only serves as motivation for James Badge Dale's character because him and his struggles are the main focus of the movie. That's the A-plot. And he's actually really good, taking even some of the film's more cringeworthy bits of dialogue and making them sound pretty natural. He's a dude who's been through a lot and has suffered a lot and carries a lot of baggage with him as a result. And he does a really good job at selling the weight of that throughout his entire performance. Where this film really shines, though, is in its first 20 to 30 minutes. The cold open of this film ends up being more of a cold short film, both in terms of terminology and atmosphere. It provides necessary and important setup for things to come, but also manages to be its own self-contained story. And that short story ends up being more terrifying than most feature films I've seen in recent years. Pryor utilizes fantastic sound design, great acting, and some truly uncanny, unnerving imagery to let your imagination wander and create some really crazy ideas about what might be going on. And for a good amount of the movie, you're going to be left wondering, because nothing from that opening sequence in the film, nothing from that cold open, even comes back into the movie until the last 20 to 30 minutes of the film. And this is a 2.5-hour movie. This is not a film that spoon-feeds you anything. This is a movie that you really have to work for your answers. And it actually makes the movie a lot more high concept than it looks from the outside. And that high concept horror comes through in droves in the final act, which introduces some really mind-bending twists that leave a lot up to interpretation. It does get a bit self-indulgent at times, mainly in its dialogue. It waxes on about the meaning and meaninglessness of existence. And a good amount of the teen characters have these long, insufferable, cringy, and at times inhumanly wooden monologues. And the film, admittedly, is a bit long. It does overstay its welcome a little. This is a 2-hour and 17-minute movie. But none of those things do overshadow the sheer amount of talent and ambition behind this movie. It's a film that absolutely deserved a wider audience, regardless of what they thought of it, and I'm hoping that people will continue to discover it now that it's out on VOD and more YouTubers are talking about it. I don't think anyone's gonna love it. I didn't even love it. And I think some people are going to absolutely hate this film, because at its core, it is high-concept horror, and it's very weird and very confusing at times, and it requires extensive thought after the fact. And some people just don't like to deal with that shit with their movies, so I get it. I don't know how many people are going to get this movie. I'm not sure I even do entirely. I might do a spoiler talk video down the line, though, to really unpack, because there is a lot to talk about. But I think that everyone should check this out, for better or for worse. It's a film that absolutely warrants discussion. The Empty Man still manages to deliver a subtle, creepy horror film that effectively captures the tonality of films like Seven or Zodiac, more than what you'd expect from its namesake. It'll leave you with a lot of unanswered questions, and it's pretty thought-provoking. It's not perfect, but I would recommend it. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this channel and you want to see more, click down there, like, comment, subscribe. There's a Patreon link down in the description if you want to donate to this channel, help us grow, make new, better quality content. I'm still leaving my Kickstarter link for Diviner down there. We have passed our first stretch goal. If you want to keep donating, please do. I would really appreciate it. You'd be like any of these cool people right here. If you want to donate to my Patreon, I would appreciate that. Even $1 would help, but even if you don't, thank you so much for watching anyway, and I will see you all very soon.